welcome everyone to our next episode of Big Data Talks, in which we have conversations with industry experts about the way in which data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence are changing the way we live. My name is Nguyen Middelburg, and I will be your host today. I'm the author of the Enterprise Big Data Framework, which is hosting this series of Big Data Talks. You can always watch back this recording and the discussion on YouTube, the Big Data Framework website, and the podcasting platform on Apple Podcasts. Today, I'm super happy to announce my next guest, Eric Nguyen. Over his 15 years in managed services, he served customers from enterprises, government, and small and medium enterprises. Eric knows what drives customer time reduction, consistent customer advocacy, and practical cost saving. And all of this with one common theme that we're going to talk about today in detail, and that is data. Eric is currently a senior manager at Synergy Group in Australia. And it's actually my first guest on the show that I have from Australia. I had the great pleasure to talk to Eric several times before, and he will also be one of the highly anticipated speakers at Big Data Days 2022 later in May. As another side activity, he is also one of the judges on the AI Journal's Global Excellence Awards 2022. Welcome to Big Data Talks, Eric.
Hi, Jan from Australia. How are we today?
Very, very good. It's absolutely a great pleasure to have you today. I've been looking very much forward to this interview for a couple of weeks right now. So I'm going to pick your brain a little bit on what is your approach towards big data, what do you see as current trends, and over the next 45 minutes to 1 hour, we're going to have a bit of a conversation around that.
Excellent. The pleasure is actually all mine, Jan. Thanks to the great work you and the team put together around this topic, and especially around your work with Big Data Framework, as well as the previous one with service automation. I really enjoy it, and looking forward to this session where I like to share and also to learn from you.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Eric, I think we now know each other, 3, maybe 4 years. And every Christmas, I always highly anticipate your handwritten Christmas cards, which is shipped by regular mail, which we nowadays call snail mail. So I typically get it somewhere in February, sometimes even March, and always puts a big smile on my face. Since you're such a digital advocate, why do you still keep this tradition of sending handwritten Christmas cards?
Thank you, Jan. I would say yes. It would be my 3rd Christmas card sent to you, counted the last one, so probably about 3 years. And in terms of, it is a very interesting question, and sometimes I got asked it a lot of the time. And I can share with you and the audience just a few aspects around that tradition and the reason why behind it. At first, it is a family tradition, actually passing on from my grandma to my mom, and then to me. My grandma, if you put it into the context, my grandma at her time, it was during the Vietnam War. It was a long decade of war, and so my grandma, she was in a way now we call it entrepreneur, and then she always treat people with respect, and she always show her with her heart. So she built connection, but without, just a transaction. It's more like personal touch, personal level. It means every New Year, we always have power present that she's going to send out to her friends, her relative, as well as business partners. So, and then my parents, especially my mom, she was a journalist. Both of my parents, they are journalists in Vietnam, and in Asia, especially in Vietnam, during the 1990s to 2000s, journalism was really a highly regarded career in society, just because we know so much. We can help business who coming from overseas, from foreign country, to find the right people, the right person to talk about business. But my mom, in a way, I always see her, with piles of greeting card over the New Year or Christmas, and she always just send it out to her contacts. without ever asking any favor. So it did become some sort of like something that I observe and I take it from them. Apart from the tradition, I've learned along the way lately in during my learning and career path. It was more around, I see it more from marketing. I would sometimes some people will not like that word, but actually I see it from marketing and learn something we call anchoring memory. So basically, if you give it to people something memorable, they can touch, they can feel, it becomes an anchor, a point of reference. So it is not really about the it is all about the meaning, the way of delivery. And so for me, I think, okay, that I feel more kind of like connect with that kind of like tradition practice when I actually send it out to special people like you, Jan. So that was pretty much behind
I think it's very, very, very inspiring. Especially, I obviously didn't know about the family tradition behind it, but it's exactly as you say. You know, sometimes people need to have something tangible and something memorable, and that's definitely the case. And the reason I'm bringing this up is in one of my previous interviews, I had a very long discussion around impact of data and the impact it has on personal connections. And one of my previous guests said, you know, we have more data in the world than ever before. And at the same time, there's more people that feel alone, that are lonely, and feel like they're missing connection. And that's kind of the reason that I brought this up as kind of an introduction question, because for me, it's very exemplary to building that personal connection. If I expand a little bit on that, if we take that as a topic and big data and the fact that it's changing the world in such a way, is big data in that sense, is it an enabler or is it more of a threat?
That's a great question, and also the way you connect those completely different opinions together, Jan. And actually, as soon as you talk about it, I think, oh, hang on, it is very relevant to all of us now. It is the term around big data with customization. So basically, it is the idea that for everyone, every single kind of like consumer who interact with big data in any way or form. So basically, each of us will have a profile. The data, the interaction, the pattern, behavior, observe, recognize, will all build up to our profile, and then someone somewhere will trade it, like make use of it, or even manipulate us in some way. So definitely, if we see it from that scheme, definitely it is more like a threat rather than an enabler. But on the other hand, I've been thinking about this kind of like a conversation. I think it actually, whether you call it a threat or an enabler, actually between the line, you acknowledge that we now depend on data. This modern society. So if now you see it from the perspective that actually we depend on it, we run on it, we need it, then I think it is like we no longer will focus on the dangerous or just like the benefit. We kind of like in between. And for sure, this is a very interesting conversation around to what extent we need to be aware of, and also where are we now actually as like say early adopter. I would say we are early adopter with in terms of big data, because the term on its own is new, and also in terms of the maturity, I would say we just barely finished the wave one, the first wave.
I fully agree there, and what you're saying is also very interesting. I fully agree. There's no way back. So the discussion in itself is obviously nice to have, but the idea that we're going to go back in time is obviously impossible and not feasible at all. Speaking about early adoption, can you share a little bit about how you got involved in this world of data analytics? What is it that made you so interested in this domain? I see you very actively involved in the community. So, what is it that you like so much about this topic?
I thought it's interesting when I looked back at my journey. Actually, I graduated in IT in software development. And back 20 years ago, IT was very much the purest learning of making software. That's all, learning a little bit of network. But so
what was the programming language that you started in?
Well, .NET was like the thing.
Good.
Java was like, oh, definitely an outcast would come into Java. And PHP was like, yeah, I can do anything.
Good. Yeah, nice.
And the back to the question around why I get into this space with data and analytics, I would say it was more like, say, a self learning journey throughout my work at my previous company, Telstra. It was a great company to work with, because you can see that you can bring real impact to real life in real time. Why? Put it this way, for example, it was a real story. It was like very late on the day, and I worked with a team. So one of they received a call from somewhere in Australia in the regional area, and apparently it was a phone number. It just didn't work. So by the severity of just pure number, it's just one single number. So you should leave it as a priority 4. It would take maybe 2-3 days for someone to even look at it. But for me, I feel, okay, give me more information. So apparently it was a local hospital. So I asked, okay, so which person owned this number? Like, is it a desk phone? No, it was the emergency room. So all of a sudden, see, so I get those number, I ask the information, and then I use it as the way to ask the field technician to drop everything and check it and give me his contact number and name and make it like the priorities. So that is the kind of, like, say, connection and also empathy and also the understand of real life, the connection between data and real life. If you see everything is just in terms of, like, say, digital input, you won't have the understanding of the impact. And because you don't have that impact, that kind of like context, you can't really influence people to drive the outcome. And I think that is the drive for me to learn more about data and actually the use of it, not just the collection of it. And it come all the way, served me well with my journey in automation, analytics, as well as and also part of AI journey.
Sounds like me that you find that personal connection very important and relevant. It's kind of a common thread that I'm seeing with the first question around the Christmas cards and also the hospital. So I kind of see why you went into this domain, because it's basically helping you steer certain decisions. If I dive one step deeper into that, I obviously I'm familiar with the work that you do on a day-to-day basis. But what I'm also always very interested in is, do you take that kind of data-driven mindset? Do you take it home? Do you use it in your family and in your daily decision-making on a day-to-day basis?
I think it is very interesting questions. I guess it is more like, say, do I have the habit of based on data, based on
correct. That's exactly what I
plan ahead. I would say I tried lately to bring my work life and my my out of work life kind of like close together with data. Just a story. A few months ago, we in the family we decided to buy our second car, and as you see, we have consumer nowadays. We have tons of choice, and the moment I start searching on Google about car, my Facebook, my LinkedIn, they just bombarded with options.
Yeah.
Yes, and guess what? In the end, what did I do? Because it's also because my wife, she asked me a very simple question: how much would it cost? Would it serve me this and that? Would it look nice? So she got a very simple taste. It has to be black, and the interior has to be leather, and prefer white. I said, all right. So in the end, I can't even believe myself. Actually, I built a cost model for me to basically cut to the chase, rather than browse through all the photo and like listen to car sale pitch, and also watch endless kind of like car review. I decided, okay, just sit down, put down some sort of like structure around those requirements, and yeah, in the end, we were very happy with our decision. It was a used Lexus hybrid with a very low mileage. And it's like, oh, actually,
You're probably the first person I speak to that actually builds a cost model to back up their financial decisions. So kind of shows that analytics is basically entrenched within your life, I would say. One of the main reasons that I started this podcast is to get a bit of a better understanding and to talk to industry experts around the way in which big data, machine learning, and AI, artificial intelligence, are changing the way we live. There's always a lot of news coverage around it. There's a lot of unclarity around it. So one of the reasons I started this initiative is to kind of pick experts' brain on their perspective on how is this changing the world and how is it going to change the way that we all live today. What is your perspective of this? How is, in your opinion, and in a couple of sentences, your perspective of how these buzzwords like machine learning and AI are changing the world that we live in today?
I would say, if I just start from my own kind of like observation around my life, I can see that definitely it changed a lot. I've been spending my last 20 years in Australia, and I can say that being someone from Vietnam, from the mega city of Ho Chi Minh City, population 10 million people buzzing around, like literally no no stop. We keep going, and moved to Australia to the capital city. Population at that time around 300,000. I can see that definitely things change dramatically, especially when I put into the context of technology, big data, for example. I can tell you three things that I experienced over the past 2 decades. I think I kind of liked it. Number one, it is about tax. With the local tax office, they use big data to simplify the way we file in tax for individual and also for business. So, and it means the tax returns is much quicker. So it is like single click, have a look, consent, send, and then within probably about a week, they text me, say, hey, we got a surprise for you.
You don't get money back, you need to pay extra.
That is amazing, isn't it? You don't have to think, you feel, and you get a kind of like confidence. That's number one. Number two, like say, in terms of like say machine learning, I find it's I'm a creature of comfort. So it's just so easy for my phone to recognize me without punching the passcode with just the fingerprint or the face.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, okay, it is comfortable. And last but not least, actually, I search it, so I can say with confidence that AI. I really think that AI is now the big part of my everyday when I drive as a driver. How? Google Maps.
Yeah.
So literally, I can talk to the phone, and then Google Maps will drive me from A to B, and give me enough warning ahead around, like say, the traffic in real time, as well as alternative kind of like route. So I would say from my own personal experience, I think you're right in terms of the technology around data or data power solution. Definitely, it is now a part of our modern life. There's no way we go back in time, and
No.
just now the matter of this is the opportunity how we're gonna make it into something that works for us with less hassle.
Yeah, well, you kind of mentioned some very good examples, because I would be absolutely lost without directions or those algorithms guiding some steps along the way. I probably even wouldn't know anymore how to get read a map and to kind of visit things like we used to do. Good. I know you're very heavily involved within the automation domain, and it's also kind of how we met. I would say probably a big passion of both of us. And I would like to pick your brain a little bit deeper around the relationship between these massive data sets, which we call big data, and the world of automated solutions, the world of RPA, robotic process automation, and the work that is done or used to be done by humans, and that is now we're trying to program all kinds of clever software robots in order to do that for us. How do you see the relationship between the world of big data and the world of automation?
Thank you, Jan, for these very important questions, because I'm sure, just speaking from the, let's say, the audience, let's say, especially those buyer or someone who interested in like improving their business or their work, definitely this is the key question they need to see in place. From my observation and also my journey with automation and data, probably over 10 years now, I can say that there is a strong connection between the two, and actually they complement each other to drive the final outcome of any business or organization. With my definition of automation that I share with you a couple of times, for me, automation, whether we give a label like RPA or intelligent automation or hyper automation, for me it is all about the mechanism to move data across multiple system and application, apply business rules on the fly as a user for the outcome, for the expected outcome. So there's nothing as, like, say, a black box here. It is very much like just something boring, predictable. That's the most boring job in the world, to watch an automate a process over and over, especially for me with client do the demo. it was so boring when you just see this thing happens on the screen, where you actually will see that it's just like, say, a name, a password, a little bit of, like, say, text. But then how it's gonna come into play with big data, where we talk about terabyte, talk about even petabytes. The reason why I see this is to, like, say, in coming to big picture here is not just big picture, but also in the practical, tactical level. Think about this way: automation, in more or less, is like the arm or the leg moving things around. It actually require the input, and big data give the input required for this action, but it's just at scale. And also for, I mentioned earlier around business rules that automation will require. It is, again, rely on big data in the form of, let's say, AI, to say, okay, this is the input, this is the number of, like, say, variable, this is the best option, apply into that kind of, like, say, a decision tree that human approve, so that we will have a very predicted outcome. And I can say that in place such as in the banking and finance sector, for example, they've done a lot of it with big data and automation. And one of the bank that I actually had a chance to talk to the person in charge of automation. He moved into the next job. They call it advanced workforce solution. And I asked him, hey, is it about analytics, big data, and automation? He said, yes. How do you know? I said, because the description vaguely tell me that it is about the bank. They have AI sitting on top of a large quantity of data, but they have no idea that how they make it into. Sure, you can have endless report, you can have endless kind of like insight, but what is it for if it doesn't come into, like, say, outcome in real time for clients? So that's one example. I think the two work together.
I think that's a very interesting term. You said advanced workplace solutions or workforce solutions?
Advanced workforce solution, because they recognize the role of automation.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. It kind of showcases directly that the automations are so good right now that they can actually be a part of the workforce that we're actually doing. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is like they call it the hybrid workforce. I would say that the first step for us when we bring this new technology, we will change the culture that humans work together. We have like some sort of like hybrid mode where we will have a human to handle certain part of the job and robot will basically take care of it. We heard about it, the term repetitive task no one love, but actually it is essential. That's why it's still there. But then I think this guy who will look at the advanced workforce, they see that now they have the bread and butter to keep their robots working, keep the funding going. Now actually they can tap into the bigger play with big data. So human will not really actively play with those kind of activity.
Yeah. Basically, you told me something new already. The hybrid workforce. I think that's a term that I'm definitely gonna use as well. It's very, very interesting. So on my previous episode, which we did around 3 weeks ago, I was talking to Dr. Akil Sahai, who is in charge of a startup in the US. And he talked about the concept that you also just mentioned, which is hyperautomation. And basically, he built data pipelines to automate massive data streams to, as you rightfully put it just now, if you have a massive input data set, how can you use robots and automation in order to really, really quickly process that data? And one of the examples he used was, if you think about all of the fluctuations of all the stock markets, so not just the one in New York, but not the one in Sydney, but every stock market in the world. And if you need to process all of that information within, let's say, split seconds to make financial decisions. And I thought that was a very interesting concept because with hyper-automation, we're combining big data, so massive sets of data, with massive automation capabilities. What is your perspective on hyper-automation? Is that a trend that we're going to see more and more?
I would say I was like when I first heard about the term hyper automation, it was like more like a marketing term from a vendor. I should not call out, but I always adore how they
I know
always.
Which vendor you're talking about.
Yes, I always adore and admire how they really embed marketing and with the perceived value into their storyline rather than reuse whatever people use in the market. And actually they're quite clever. And I picked it up with the word hyper automation. I think, hang on, this sounds familiar. And when I look back in time, we have something similar. Hyperlink. It was the things. For me, this automation term, kind of like a tsunami of automation term now, actually it was the replication of the World Wide Web, kind of like 2000, the year 2000, and hyperlink was the thing there. When we say, oh, everything together, one, you got access to everything. It's like, makes sense. I like it. But now when I back to the hyper automation, whether I think it will stay or it will evolve, I would say on its own as a technology, it is nothing new. It just like say when you try to bring the outcome from the sum of technology, and now you basically it is so ready to be used. Like say with big data, for example, it is now more affordable. It is now more like say a turnkey business. If you have enough funding, you can have it in maybe just a matter of weeks or even days. The infrastructure is setting. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, if you think about that deeper, because I like your analogy between hyperlinks and hyperautomation. Kind of is as you said, the technology's been out there for a long time already. It's just that the amount of data that we're processing it's massive nowadays. because a lot of that work is now done in an automated way. We have automated systems basically steering our the planes in the air, the control systems on the streets, you name it. Is there a moment where you say that the power of automating these large, big data sets is going to become a threat? Is there a moment that we see that the robots, as you typically see in the movies, are going to take over control over the information that we have and over the processes that are being executed? What's your thoughts on that?
I do see it. It is more from two fronts. At first, it was from the actual kind of algorithm that we create within the like the data model, and then also in the part that we have built those automation for example, one simple example. Think about the control of traffic light around the city. I am sure now it is that you don't see people just look around and say, "Oh, it's busy now. Let's turn it right." Actually, they have software, and those software at the back, you will definitely have AI model try to bring together all sort of like the various kind of like change in the environment at the scale that we simply we can't process at once at all. For me, it is more around, let's say, the part that when we build it, we have bias in the model, we have bias in the data that we train, and also we based on a lot of assumption. For, let's say, in case of, let's say, emergency, if the data model never get trained with, let's say, emergency, like say fire, like in Australia, we experienced major bushfire 2 years ago, for example. If you run a city traffic light and all of a sudden you just stop everyone from moving and then there was fire, evacuation, you need to see that kind of like scenarios. Do we build enough, like say, exit plan for us? That's the first thing around, let's say, the build of those solution. And secondly, I would be more worried or concerned around, let's say, the human aspect, hacker and cybercrime nowadays. The same story, for example, with I think it's always present in movie. When we see those action movie, the first thing they do, of course, guys, they will change the traffic light.
Exactly, and that's always what amazes me. Is there a point where it becomes more of kind of an ethical question than a technology one? As you know, I'm also heavily involved in big data systems, automation systems. I work with very big companies across the world. And what I've seen so far is that, especially when we talk about automation and automated processes, there's always a lot of talk about machine learning. There's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence. But I would say at this stage, 85-90% of all of the automations which are running in enterprise companies, it's just basically very, very simple workflows. They're executed by robots, but in essence, it's just very simple if-else functionality. Only in the last year and a half, I've seen slowly that companies started to actually experiment with machine learning models and to see how they could use some of the technology to kind of automate those processes even further. Good example is I've recently worked on a project where there was a use of a machine learning model where documents that are coming in, could be thousands of documents every single week, are automatically classified in terms of whether it's a text, a document, or whether it's an invoice, or whether it's a PO. And based upon some machine learning models, it was fairly accurately in describing these kinds of documentations. But it took a while, and that was kind of like the brand new practice. Do you share that experience? Do you because you have years and years of automation knowledge under your belt? Are we really entering the stage in which you've seen active use cases of machine learning and AI, or is it still something that is primarily sold but not really executed? I know it's a bit of a long question, but it's kind of good to kind of pick your brain around that.
Thanks, Jan. With this question, I think it is quite interesting and relevant to every one of us, especially those still young and early in their career path. And I say it with all my seriousness. Why? Because apparently it happened with my wife, and she applied for some job, and it always required her to go to do some tests, and this climber referred to some startup. So I help her with along the way, and I'm curious, so I jump into Google and search and learn about it, and I can say that nowadays, not just private but also public sector, they accept and use AI model for screening, and it is scary in this way. Basically, now you write this is not my word, actually I saw it from a veteran in the HR space, is that nowadays if you write your CV, actually you write it for the machine to read, not for human.
Yeah.
Yes. And
That's
it was mind-blowing. Yes, and this is like scary in a way that, okay, am I get disadvantaged because I did not hit all these criteria that no one really understand? Or would the machine and the data model really understand the context of my strength? You know, when you apply for a position, for example, people will expect that you have the equivalent experience of that position. It makes no sense. Why would you jump in to do the same things? Normally you jump from, let's say, in what they call a parallel position. You do something in somewhere that you have the transferable skill, and you come in, you can close the gap or even exceed it with your ability. Or you're just within the same line of job, and you progress with the promise that, okay, I've done a great job in the past. This is a confidence that you can have in me to cover the gap. But surprisingly, most of the startup, they're going to show you that they're going to base on a number of assessment, like Myers-Briggs, if you know what I mean. Let's say,
yeah,
sure,
absolutely.
It's just the research, but it is the research, and then how do you really convert? So where's the data? Where's the some sort of like baseline here? So for me, it is the question whether we should be worried about the future. No, I say no. It is actually now. And I feel like I'm lucky that I do not face that challenge, but I'm sure a lot of people. And just on that topic, back in the COVID pandemic in Mexico, as I've learned from my work in automation, apparently there were a startup, and they was proudly say that they can provide literally in no time candidate for, like, say, hospitality in Mexico City.
Yeah, that's a
they're going to use chatbot.
Yeah,
Please
I
go.
think that's a very interesting use case, and I'm going to pick your brain a little bit deeper around big data, and especially, I know that's a topic that's close to your heart around the post-COVID recovery. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But before I close this topic around automation and machine learning and artificial intelligence, just want to kind of get your perspective. And it's not so much a technical question, but more of a philosophical one. And maybe in line with the movies that we've seen and the topics you just discussed. Do you think fundamentally that it's possible that a robot will come close towards possessing natural intelligence that you and I have? Do you think that we're going to see that in our lifetime?
I would doubt it. It just simply put it this way. I say that the way that when we see robot, it is similar to how we do some things. It requires input with the process and then the outcome, and then the robot will have the ability to check the outcome and have, like, say, some sort of like a baseline observation and self-learning, or we train it. But in order to be able to be like one of us, it will require, I think, more than just the observation of what is going on in the baseline. because we are human. We are so complex with emotion, with feeling, with appealing. Think about this way. Turn the table around this way, Jan. Think about if you have a robot with intelligence, would you be able to sell something to the robot?
Well, that's
you use the same
nobody ever asked me before. Maybe we should turn the tables a little bit more often and look from it from the other perspective. The answer would be no. So probably I would never do that. And I think that's exactly one of the emotional hurdles that we would still need to take. Because as long as we're not able or willing to do that, then the other way around is also not going to happen. So that's a very good point to make.
And also think about, like, say, the part around, like, say, sacrifice. It is the ultimate kind of like emotion that a human can or be capable of. And remember, this is not something that you will be trained or try and retry. Normally, just in a split second, for like so many kind of like emotion surge, you decide, okay, I will give up for something. But if it is an algorithm, would you think that any creator would say, okay, I will have a hidden line code here for sacrifice function, sacrifice me?
It's actually getting back towards that personal touch that you mentioned all the way in the beginning. I think as long as robots are not able to get towards that level, it will become very difficult to kind of start seeing that as actual replacements for people. Good. I think that's a very, very good point that you're bringing up. You already mentioned it in one of the applications that you brought up, and I know that this is a topic you love to talk about. You're also going to talk about this during the Big Data Days, and that is what is the possibilities that this new technology and especially big data automation is bringing to this world of post-COVID recovery. Where do you see opportunities?
I can see immediately the opportunity is around the reset of our mindset as individual, as a collective society, as organization as well. Especially, like say, if now we put in the context of the region, in China or in Southeast Asia or even in Japan, for example. In the past, like I said, we experienced a good ride with economic booms. I can say it is like coming down to cheap fuel and cheap data. The cost to acquire data was cheap. There was no regulation, and it was lack of regulation. And people were so excited to give up data. So basically, all the company that in the region that drive the digital economy boom, I call wave one, they rely on those kind of like commodity to really proceed ahead with innovation. But however, now with the post-COVID, it is a reset. People now will evaluate our existence. We see the kind of like we are that vulnerable, and the business is quite vulnerable. And also on top of that, we must acknowledge that the logistic, it is actually also at the breaking point. It's all about, we see the backlog, the delay, and also the part that the existing kind of like vehicle for e-commerce is literally reaching the capacity. So it is a reset at organization level, business model.
Yeah, I agree. I think that reset is definitely coming, and I think a lot has changed, especially in the last 2 years in terms of mindset, but also in terms of resources and the way that we're operating and working across the world. One of the things that really I've taken a personal interest in the last 2 years is if you think about decision-making and the way that people have been reacting towards the COVID pandemic and all the things that were going on. One of the things that I personally found very interesting, if you look at it a bit more from a macroeconomic point of view, is that maybe for the first time, or at least there was a large willingness to share, but a lot of countries had the exact same data. So we can call big data, we had all these test studies, we had studies around cases, we had studies around the health effects, the financial effects, etc. And one of the things that really stuck with me is that even though the world was pretty much at an equilibrium in terms of data and the knowledge that they were provided, they all made different decisions. So some countries decided to open their borders very quickly. Other countries still have not opened borders. In Europe nowadays, everything is open again. And here in Malaysia today is by accident the first day that international travel is allowed again. I hope it's not an April 1 fool joke. But the key point beyond my question is there's the same data, and this can also, of course, be the case for companies that have similar data sets to their disposal, but it leads to different decision making. Whereas the basic promise that we always have with big data is that if we all have the data, then we can predict what the best decision would need to be. So what's your view of this? Is data still driving the optimal decision, or has COVID shown us that that's definitely not the case?
I kind of have the same observation and curiosity like you from very early day in during this kind of like pandemic journey, because personally, when things happens in China in like say I think in January 2020, as a Vietnamese, my family immediately they just, hey, be careful, this is something happened, this might be deadly. But to my surprise, when I talked to my colleague and also my clients, then it was like, no, it's China. Never trust them. They don't have the right data. And also we are Australia. In Australia, we are like say developed country. We have literally it is like a status in a way that we will get the immune. We will be fine. It just happened in those like say developing country. And it is to the extreme this way. So I went to the client side with my team, and it was like in March of that year, and then they still haven't talked about really about like said the lockdown or how serious it is. It's just like emerging, and then I decided, okay, I'll get my team into on site, and every of us will wear a mask, and trust me, we got very strange look. as we come in, and okay, so that's the observation. Like you say, in Australia, we're supposed to have access to the same data, the same information like those in Vietnam, China, or Malaysia, or even in the UK. But lately, I think when the more I think about, like say the data, the actual data, and the 5V of big data, I think variety come in play. It is not about the quantity or the access to the data, but actually the extra layer of data around the social context, around, like say, the situational awareness about the sense of the public, and also the popularity of the leaders. I'm sure it is different between the Prime Minister of Netherlands, not Holland, the Netherlands.
The Netherlands, very well, yeah.
Versus Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of England. I think it come to play, and it actually influenced the decision making. And I also can think of politics as well, and human. I think for the first time we realized that data is part of the decision making process, data driven especially. Because on top of that, there are others, how they call it, art. It plays.
I think that's a very good point, because that, in my opinion, is probably the only logical explanation, is the fact that there's so many different policies and so many different directions that different countries took. If it's not reason, and it's not machine learning, and it's not prediction, and it's not, this is the best way forward, then I think there's only one outcome, and then that's political decisions.
It is highly political at some point, especially with the reopening as well. It could be a gambling, a big gambling that each decision maker will have to live with.
Good. I know you can talk about post-COVID recovery for days, and I know you're also going to be one of our speakers during the Big Data Days, which is coming up on 24th and 25th May this year. Just as a sneak preview, I'm not quite sure whether you already prepared your presentation because it's still 2 months out. But for our listeners, do you have a kind of a sneak preview what you're going to talk about?
Oh, definitely, Jan. I can give you a little bit of like a teaser. Think about this is like a very common theme around buyers when they talk about big data. Say, okay, I have like say a petabyte or 100 gigabyte of this data. Look, and definitely there must be something good in it. So it is always it's like the starting of any kind of like big data journey. It is purely from, I think it is from the idea that fear of missing out rather than really something genuinely around it is going to be like say serious investment, or it is like the way out, the next level for business. So and now if we combine it with COVID, post-COVID recovery especially, I think the practicality is come first. You have to show that you can make progress, make the outcome, and actually it has to be repeatable. It will become boring piece of technology. It is extremely difficult if we just see big data as a technology and we simply bring in and ask everyone, okay, what is your problem? it will fail spectacularly. And that's number one. Number two, when you think about, like say, the part I mentioned earlier, that with the wave one of digital economies, where we have access to cheap fuel and the data, the cost to acquire data is cheap, and people willingly to give you data, and you literally you can survey them. This point I have to make it is like a lot of talk around big data still use the example around your mobile. Let's say you bring your mobile all day long so people can ping and say, okay, check the traffic, and they can see like your interest. But long gone that day, especially now, like say you're not able to spy people and say, yep, you can sell the data.
No, very good. So I'm definitely going to be signing up for your session. Obviously, I'm going to be there as well. So I think that's a pretty good teaser. I'm really looking forward to your presentation there. Speaking about events, one of the things that also really attracted my attention is that you mentioned that you are going to be this year's judge on the Global Excellence Awards by the AI Journal, which is a pretty renowned publication. So I was very interested by that. How did you get involved with this contest?
Again, it was back to the day of during the COVID pandemic, and the AI Journal was born out of that kind of like chaotic time in London, and just over my my network of contact, I got a chance to talk to the founder, Alan, so basically we share our perspective around the use of technology and actually the change of technology on its own to fit for purpose for human. So we build from that kind of like relationship. He also can see that the way that I see automation was in a way very different from others, because I keep saying, no, this is the vendor say, this is I see, this is my experience, this is the real story to back it up, A, B, C, D. And on top of that, I use a lot of technique from marketing and management. I always refer to the hierarchy of needs, embedded into, like say, automation, for example, because in the end,
that's a very old technique to put into a completely new focus.
But actually, it makes sense. It makes sense. You we keep hearing the word that human will be replaced, will be displaced out of job because of robots. But actually, when you actually see that put into the perspective of the Maslow, the 5 needs, you see, oh, hang on, the automation, actually, we can place it partly here, partly there for human. And this is the part that we expect our people to excel, not this part. And
So that's a very interesting question. So to what level in Maslow's hierarchy do you think a robot is able to go? Can it accommodate safety needs, or is that one step too far?
I would say not self-actualization.
No, I agree there.
But any the remaining 4 level, definitely robot can help human to have that need fulfilled. It's just because we make ourselves busy, or we are really busy, and we only have 24 hours, and we're only able to work and function probably 10 to 12 hours. So
that's already stretching it.
Oh, definitely. So I think if you see that from that perspective, from that social aspect of our modern society, you will see, oh, robot is part of our modern society, and it works on a lot of my conversation with clients and even like internal stakeholders. So that's why I keep sharing that.
Good. Can I know time is always flying by in these sessions, but maybe can I ask you one last question before we close off, and that is, throughout this episode we've been talking a lot around all the possibilities of data. We've seen how it can be used in post-COVID recovery. You talked about now Maslow's pyramid and how it can assist you. One of the main objectives and reasons why I started this show is to inspire people to start learning more around big data and to know more around machine learning and AI, because that way you can make an informed opinion about what's going on in the world. You know about the latest technologies and how they are changing society for the better, or maybe sometimes even for the worse. Do you have any parting advice or maybe an inspiring story or something that you encountered recently that will explain or motivate our listeners to kind of start learning more about these topics?
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to share. I would say for AI or machine learning or big data, definitely when we encourage people to get into it, it is always come with the price they have to pay, which is a lot of effort, a lot of like grinding. So just to give you to end the conversation with some sort of like entertainment, I'll share with you a story I think is quite interesting and inspiring. Think about this potholes. How do you see garbage truck can help your city to fix those potholes? That's the question I have for you.
I have absolutely no idea.
Okay, but actually,
indicating it on an application or something like that?
You are very close. Apparently, the missing link here is the AI. It's the AI pieces. So actually, it happened now in Canberra, my city, and also in Sydney, and apparently around the world. If you search for pothole AI solution, you see tons of conversation. It is apparently now it is the hot topic because
and that's very interesting.
Yes. So how garbage truck can help your city to fix the pothole? Here's the things. Like say, if we just see the conventional narrative, we say, okay, we have like a startup in Canberra. They say, oh, hey, we have come up with this solution for pothole. How? We have image recognition. We'll basically have our model will see the road, the picture of the pothole, and yep, it will identify here, flag it as a pothole, and maybe extract the geolocation of the pothole. Excellent. But is it practical? Absolutely not. without the garbage truck. Why? Apparently you have, think about, let's say in your city, you have not one road, you have 100,000 or a lot more. So which the only, it turned out the garbage truck is the only vehicle that actually cover every single road in a city, routinely, not randomly. You cannot ask the citizen to say, okay, put out your mobile at work, go and take photo of the pothole someplace near you. It is idiot. It is crazy, dangerous, because it could be a highway. But with the garbage truck, you actually have a very reliable coverage constantly. So that is, I think, the story to highlight the part that this technology actually very relevant to all of us. So if you see,
it's a very, very, very interesting case study, and I'm definitely going to look this one up. I never heard about this before.
I think you will never see anyone actually spin it in the way that I just pictured to you.
Good, Eric. I could spend the rest of the day and evening talking to you, but we're getting close towards the end of our hour. I want to thank you so much being part of the podcast today. It's always so easy to talk to you. I could easily do this every week without any preparation because it's just a very, very good conversation. And thank you so much for sharing your insights. I hope that you've inspired others to think differently about big data, think differently about machine learning and the impact that it has on our lives today and probably even more towards the future. Thanks so much for your wisdom, and for the people who want to see more of Eric, he's going to be presenting at Big Data Days in May. So if you are interested to learn more about his views, then I highly suggest that you sign up for a session. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Jan, for the opportunity. And it's always my pleasure to be in those conversations with you. And looking forward to the coming conversation we will have in May about automation in the perspective of COVID, automation, big data in the post-COVID recovery.
Thanks, Eric. We'll speak again soon.
Thank you, Jan. Have a good night.